Welcome to the Five Heart Podcast. Greg is not here again this week, so you're starting with me, crusty old John Johnston, founder of cornnation.com, trying to be, uplifting, trying to be energetic, trying to get through this pandemic without bad things happening until it's over or something. I'm joined by Todd Wolverton, who's less of a commie pinko this week than he was last, but probably still has those tendencies. How you doing, Todd?
John, I'm just doing wonderful, wonderful. And did you know the pandemic's over in Texas? It's over. So if you want to go to wherever there's no more pandemic, go to Texas.
You know, I've lived in Texas a few times.
Yeah, I know you lived in Texas a few times.
There's a certain appreciation I have for Texas. I mean, the beautiful part about Texas is you can make best friends with somebody immediately. I mean, like, share a beer, your best buddies, and then 20 years later, that fucker will shoot you to death during a card game. Because that's Texas, man. That's how it is. They just, they're just like, one of the hardest things I had to learn when I moved to Minnesota after living in Nebraska and Texas was that everybody up here plans everything incessantly, right? Down in Texas and kind of in Nebraska, but not as much as Texas because they're, Texas. You could just go, hey, let's have a barbecue. And people would show up and they go, we're having a barbecue, and bring beer and meat and grill it. And you know what I mean? In Minnesota, you can never do that unless you have a bunch of out-of-state friends, because they have to plan things for a lifetime, actually. They're very anal retentive people that are stuck in their ways. They all have their lives planned out ahead of time, and you can't just show up and have a party and become friends with people immediately. It's really just two different worlds. So, they could end the pandemic today and tomorrow to be on again. This is just how they do it.
That's how they do it. You're right. Well, John, you better introduce our other host here. He's I think he's the president of your fan club. I see that he's got your picture on the front of his T-shirt tonight.
He does, and you know what? I bet I don't even get paid for that. Dylan Gunter, our wrestling correspondent, all the way from Beirut. How you doing?
Good, man. I like that opening statement. That was very dude of you.
Is the pandemic over for you?
It's not. But I don't live in Texas, so I guess that, that's very.
Go there. You can just go there right now.
Well, I would love to go to Texas since the coronavirus is gone there. So.
Well, maybe we should all. The baseball team's playing there this weekend.
It's true.
Yeah.
Which really kind of, they're going to play up at U.S. Bank the week after that. And I hope to God they don't go to Texas and catch some strain of coronavirus that isn't known yet. It's the Texas coronavirus.
They do have all the strains, man. So.
Okay. So if Dylan and Todd are together, it's clear we're going to talk about wrestling. And Todd, I'm honestly, I'm going to let you take over, because I'm interested in wrestling and I enjoy wrestling, but I don't know much about it.
Well, let's have, Dylan's the correspondent for Corn Nation, and he pays real close attention to what's going on with the sport. And so, I think it'd be appropriate for Dylan to start out and kind of give a little bit of a wrap up to the season, the regular season, and where the team's at right now. And we have the Big 10 tournament coming up this weekend, and he and I can talk a little bit about that. But Dylan, let's kind of bring us up to date on the Nebraska Cornhusker wrestling team.
All right. Yeah. So this year, Nebraska went 7-1. They're ranked number 8. So they're the 4th team in the Big 10. They're probably, I think they're one of just a handful of teams in the Big 10 that even got close to wrestling all their matches. A lot of matches were canceled due to COVID. But Nebraska has a really solid team. They got a lot of guys with 1 seed, 2 seed, 4 seeds, 6s. So they've put themselves in a good spot right now as far as Big Ten tournament coming up to place a lot of guys. There's been a bit of roster moves too that we'll probably talk about, I'm sure. A couple guys in there that weren't in there all year, and it's kind of been a juggling process. Yesterday, I was on the press conference with Coach Manning and Eric Schultz, and I kind of talked to him about some of that stuff. So I'll bring that up as we go along. But all in all, yeah, Nebraska, their only loss this year was to number 1 Iowa, and we talked extensively before about that. So that's just something that Iowa's going to do to everybody right now. So.
Hey, maybe this episode, Todd, you couldn't just get on your knees for Iowa this time, huh?
I'll stay off of them.
Okay, that's good.
I will
maybe insult Iowa once in a while. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to?
Hey, I got one for you. I got one for you later.
Okay.
No, but I talked to Manning and about the fact that a lot of these teams have missed a lot of duels due to the COVID. And Nebraska's been pretty lucky, and we've gotten all of our duels in except one. Like for instance, Iowa hasn't wrestled in almost a month. Yeah. So there you go, John. There's your.
That's because they're pansies. They're avoiding the competition.
There's your sliver of hope, John. Sliver of hope, man. Iowa might be rusty. They might not be able to do back-to-back matches. I don't know. It might come and play.
Dylan, I think you're making a good point there, though, because, at least in the sport of wrestling, they want to be peaking. And,
right.
When Iowa, they shut the program down for 2 weeks and guys couldn't even be in the wrestling room. And right. in a recent interview, they were talking about how these guys are going out there in that -15 all bundled up, just running and that type of thing. So I think that the teams that wrestled more are at an advantage, going into this tournament.
Yeah, because you think about it, most years these guys have 20 matches going in, 20 plus. And this year, if you've got 7, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. So really, we really don't know what's going to happen. You could easily see a 6, 8, 9 seed go on into the finals, and it wouldn't really surprise me, to be honest.
Well, I think, before we kind of look at each one of the weights on paper, and, that's just basically what we're kind of doing here is on paper. Right. On paper, Iowa is the prohibitive favorite. They have 4 number 1 ranked wrestlers, or number 1 seeded wrestlers. They have 3 guys that are seeded number 2, and they've got 2 guys that are seeded number 3. No one else can match that. And then you probably look at Michigan, Penn State, and Nebraska, as you said, they're ranked 8th. They're kind of the 4th Big Ten team. But, do you see, when the dust all clears, and you're right, I believe there's going to be a lot of, it's unpredictable. But do you see it following kind of that way, Iowa, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska? Or do you think Nebraska can squeak in there, higher than 4th place?
Actually, I was looking at that all today, and last year Nebraska got 2nd, and they got 2nd probably by a pretty healthy margin, and just a lot of guys I think we had 5 guys get 3rd place. So, those team points add up a lot. We didn't have a single champion, and we got 2nd place running away, and Iowa beat us by 30. So this year, obviously, I think it's going to be Iowa's in its own tier, but I think Nebraska, Penn State is really tier 2, and I think Michigan's kind of below that. As far as strength of your entire team, we might not have the 7 guys seeded 1st or 2nd, but Nebraska has a really, really solid lineup. And like we've talked about, in past years, we would definitely be in the hunt to win, but this is just a generational team for Iowa, and that is what it is. But Nebraska has every shot to get 2nd place, and I think they got a really good shot at beating Penn State. But yeah, Ohio State, Michigan, I think are fall a little bit below that. So
okay, so one of the higher ranked Nebraska wrestlers is the little guy that opens up at 125 pounds, Liam Cronin. Why don't you preview 125 pounds for us, and what do you think about Liam?
Okay. Cronin got the number 2 seed, which, going into the season, I never, ever would have predicted that. He's 7-1. He's beaten a bunch of ranked guys. The only guy he's lost to is Spencer Lee, which Spencer Lee is almost like a microcosm of the Iowa team right now, where he's just so it's really 125 at Big Tens and in the NCAAs is really just Spencer Lee is going to win and who gets second, where the guy's just that dominant. He's pinned all 4 people he's wrestled this year. He pinned Liam Cronin in like a minute and a half. So I don't see, but other than that, I really see Liam Cronin making it to the final. I mean, I see him getting his second shot at Spencer Lee this year, but I don't think it'll go well, but that'll be a lot of, that'll be good for team points for Nebraska to get a guy into a final.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Spencer Lee, he was the Hodge winner last year, the Sullivan winner for the outstanding amateur athlete in the United States last year. He's at a level above everybody else.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think Liam Cronin, I think he's wrestled well this year, and I think he's got an excellent chance to be on. I don't know that he can beat Spencer Lee. I'm not going to go that far, but I don't think it's not going to happen. But he can be on that number 2 step, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to beat Spencer Lee. I think, honestly, by the time that guy's gone, he might be arguably the best 125er ever.
Yeah, I would agree with you, no doubt.
So,
well, at 133, that's a weight class for Nebraska that saw a couple of different guys in and out of the lineup this year. Alex Thompson started the season there. And down, the second part of the season and going into the Big Ten tournament, we got Tucker Shomley. And I hope I'm not butchering that name too bad.
I think you're good.
He's in the pre-seeds, they had him at 11. He hasn't been on the mat as much as some of the other wrestlers out there. But he's, I've only seen him wrestle once. And what stood out to me about him is he's a gamer. I mean, he doesn't back down to anyone. And he comes off the mark on the first whistle, and he wants to turn it into a fight. I mean, he's a scrapper, and so who knows? 133. Your top seeded guy is Roman Bravo Young from Penn State, and Austin DeSanto is ranked number 2, or seeded number 2. But in my opinion, I'm kind of like 125. I think it's wide open. I think those 2 guys are prohibitive favorites, but this is a chance for Nebraska to maybe score some points that on paper, it might not look like they're there, but I think there's a chance here.
Yeah, I definitely think he could definitely outperform his seed. And I think Nebraska would benefit a lot from that. I mean, like you said, those 2 top guys are going to be tough to take down at 133. But, like Manning told me yesterday, a lot of team points are determined in the wrestlebacks. Yep. So it's going to be important for a guy like Shomling, as an 11 seed. A lot of times those guys get dinged early and then they have to wrestle their way back. And if you can get a couple wins, maybe a major decision, you can get some extra points for your team. That's important. And if you can, if he can come and finish 8th, 9th, then he outperformed his seed and he did his job.
Well, 141 arguably could be the deepest weight class. I mean, there's a couple others that are pretty solid, but you got 141, and we have Nebraska's got I think a 3-time national qualifier, Chad Redd. He's an All-American, and he's going to be seated number 4. So talk to us just a little bit about Chad Redd and how you see things working out at 141.
Okay. Yeah. Chad Redd has finished second before at the Big Tens. Last year he finished 3rd. So he's been there, and it's pretty widely known that, Chad Red is different than in the season Chad Red for whatever reason. He always turns it on at the Big Tens, NCAAs. So he's not a guy that I'd be happy about seeing in my road towards the final. I mean, obviously he's seeded number 4. I mean, this just shows how good this bracket is he's seeded number 4. He's 8-1, and his only loss is to the number 1 guy in the country.
Yeah.
And it was like I think it was an 8-4 decision. So it wasn't even like he didn't get decked. So, I mean, those quarterfinals, man, are going to be fire. I mean, you're going to see Chad go against number 1, Jaden Ironman, Iowa again. But the other quarterfinal is Nick Lee. Obviously they have to get there, but you expect it to be Nick Lee and Sebastian Rivera. And Sebastian Rivera won a Big Ten title beating Spencer Lee at 125 2 years ago. And then last year he moved up to 33 and he won a Big Ten title there. And now he's moving up to 41 and he's going to go for another Big Ten title at a 3rd weight class. So this is one of the toughest brackets that you could really put together.
Well, Chad Red was ahead of Jaden Ironman, and it took a rally by Ironman late in the match, to beat Chad Red.
Because he scored on him pretty quick.
Yes, he did. He went right out and took him down.
Yeah.
And rode him pretty tough. So I would agree with you. And Seabass, Sebastian Rivera, he's in my opinion, he's kind of the wild card at that weight, and who knows what's going to happen with him.
And he hasn't wrestled for a couple weeks too.
Right.
Rutgers has been out of commission, so I was kind of hoping to see, kind of him to get a few more matches in there. But he's totally a wild card. I mean, you could have made the argument that he should have been the 1 seed with. Okay, sorry, Spirit. Sorry, that was my daughter coming in here. Okay. So, but yeah, I could totally see Sebastian Rivera being anywhere from 1 seed to 4 seed, and you could legitimately argue that why, so.
149. I think this is one of the most interesting weight classes.
Right.
And I think from top to bottom, 149 may end up being, you talked about maybe seeing a 6, 7, 8 seed get into the finals. You look at the top seed is Sammy Sasso from Ohio State. And yes, absolutely. But you know what? He is so funky and so goofy that sometimes he gets himself in situations where it appears he's got a lot of control, and then crazy things happen. So I think, and you'd predicted that Ridge Lovett would find his way into the lineup at some point. And he's in there at 149. He's wrestled the last few duels there. He's an incredibly tough wrestler on top. And some of these guys haven't seen him. So, he's coming in at, the number 7. And outside, Max Mirren from Iowa is seated number 2, legitimately. But I think Ridge Lovett, he's going to outperform his seed. He's one that will. And, he might be the one that they're talking about, on Sunday afternoon that, knocked off some names and ended up being one of the Cinderella stories of this tournament. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think he'll look that way to the outside, the outside world. I've been a big fan of Ridge Lovett for a couple years. That kid coming out of high school was incredible. I actually talked to Manning about him yesterday. He dropped down to 133. He said it was an incredibly tough weight cut for him. He moved up to 41. I mean, this last. Okay, sorry. There you go. He moved up to 41. Obviously, he couldn't get past Chad Red. He kind of sat there behind him. Now he's at 49. And Coach Manning was like, it ain't like this dude's moving up 2 weight classes and he's going to be small. He's like, he's a legit 149 pounder. I mean, he won the junior national championship in freestyle this fall. the dude's a stud, and everybody at 33 last year knew it. And when they got it, like, you know, at the beginning of a period, when they got to choose top or bottom or whatever, instead of choosing bottom and trying to get that escape point, they went neutral with him because they knew they weren't going to get up.
Well, I can tell you, Ridge Lovett he's my favorite Nebraska wrestler now. I mean, I loved watching him last year, and I like his style. So, you know, if somebody had to say, Todd, pick your favorite Cornhusker wrestler, it is Ridge Lovett. I'm glad to see him in the lineup. And good things hopefully are going to happen. The next one in the lineup is up at 157 pounds. We got a Nebraska high school graduate that has wrestled at 157 all year. What can you tell us about Caleb Licking? I think he's from Norfolk, as a matter of fact.
Yep, Caleb Licking's from Norfolk. That's about 45 minutes to an hour away from Columbus, where I'm at. Yeah, he's 3-4 on the year. He's a senior. He's had some, obviously you're 3-4. He's had some ups and downs, but he's got some pretty decent wins. It's the Big Ten, man. And if you're not a top shelf talent, you struggle. And he's got a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys in that weight class that make that thing pretty stacked. I mean, Caleb Young from Iowa, that was a tough one. Ryan Deacon from Northwestern came back. He's the number one in the weight class. He's kind of like Spencer Lee in this class, where it's kind of Ryan Deacon and then who wants to maybe finish second, because one of his last matches out, I think he tech-falled like Brayton Lee from Minnesota, I think. And Brayton Lee is a beast. And he couldn't do anything. I was watching that, and it just looked like he was wrestling a high school kid, man. I think he's going to go on to do a lot of really good things after college too, internationally.
Yeah, I would agree.
As far as Caleb Licking goes, he's a 10 seed. He's another guy kind of like Tucker Schomling, where coming through the wrestlebacks is going to be really important. He's another guy that's hard nosed. I've seen a lot of you see a lot of the matches with these guys going against top flight talent, top flight guys, and you have to give them credit. They are not backing down. They might be trailing or losing big, and they're still getting after it. And he's from Norfolk. He's a tough kid, so I think he's done a good job filling that spot, because it was kind of a position this year where we don't really have a lot of options, and they decided to move Peyton Robb up to 65. So Caleb Licking, the senior that's been in the room, putting in the work, practicing with the guys, I think he earned that spot, and I'm actually excited to see what he can do. I'm expecting him to maybe upset somebody.
I think it would be a wonderful cap to his career if he were to place in the top 8, if he were to get a medal and be able to stand on the award stand, because he's put in the time. And
getting an NCAA seed would be cool too,
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think, what is it? They get 157 gets 7 automatic qualifiers. So if he gets top 7, then he's going to NCAAs. And I think he could get into that 7. I think it'll be tough. He's going to have to he's going to have to beat 1 or 2 guys that he's not favored against. So
right.
But I think he can do it.
Up at 165, you've already mentioned his name, Peyton Robb. The top seed at 165 is the Bull, Alex Marinelli from Iowa. Peyton Robb is the number 7. This is all I can wrap this one up real quick. Peyton Robb won't back down to anybody, and he is a big move wrestler. And in a tournament like the Big Ten, a guy that has big moves, a guy that can toss somebody right to their back, can open a lot of eyes and can advance in the tournament pretty easy. I think Peyton Robb will wrestle above his seed as well. I don't think that he can match up to Marinelli, because Marinelli, he can wrestle that way too. We saw that with his battles against Vincenzo Joseph. But I think Peyton Robb can wrestle with anybody else in that weight class. And it would not surprise me, because the 7th seed will be on the bottom half of the bracket. It would not surprise me if Peyton Robb can bump off a couple of those guys seated above him and find his way to the finals. That would not surprise me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That wouldn't surprise me, especially like you said, he'll be, he's going to be on the opposite side of the bracket as Marinelli. So he'll, he ain't going to have to hit with him if he makes the finals. But you were talking about that. That's actually, he lost to Marinelli 9-3, and it's the worst loss of his career. Like, I went and looked back, and I think other than that match, his worst loss is 3 points.
Wow.
His entire career, like last year, he lost like 6 or 7 matches against ranked guys, but they were all 1 point, 2 point, 1 point, 1 point, 2 point. And even this year, I think, let me see, his last match, he lost to Dan Bronigal, who's undefeated. He's number 2 seed. He lost 9-6. So it's not like he's in every match. He's in every single match he's wrestled as a collegiate, except for that match against Marinelli, and he was kind of in that anyway.
Yeah, he was kind of in that until late.
Yeah, so really, I don't look at him ever taking the mat and say, oh, there's no way. There's no way he could beat this guy. I think he's got every chance in the world. Like you said, he likes to go big too. He likes to throw guys. He likes to, he gets a lot of near fall and big, big point combinations. So like if he can throw Marinelli or whatever, like that's open. That's an open match then. That's a big lead. And he has a really good style as far as kind of staving off somebody else's offense. Right. So I absolutely think he's going to finish better than 7th. Last year, I think he was seeded, I want to say 8th, but he ended up finishing 3rd.
Yeah.
So, and that was as a freshman. So, yeah, absolutely. I look at him as probably finishing in the top 4, I think, easily.
Well, 174. We have perhaps, in my opinion, the most exciting Nebraska wrestler of this season. Match in and match out. We've got Mikey Labriola, and he's coming in seated number 2. Number 1 seed is Michael Kemmerer from Iowa. Talk to us a little bit about how you see this all playing out at 174, Dylan.
Okay. Mikey Labriola is 8-0. He only has 1 win over a ranked opponent. It was DJ Washington of Indiana. He was beating him pretty good until Washington kind of scored on him late. Labriola ended up winning 13-7. But then again, you can't control who you're facing. So he's done his job. He's beat everybody. I actually think that he should be seeded number 1. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the number 1 seed, Michael Kemmerer, did not wrestle when Nebraska wrestled against Iowa, and Mikey Labriola did. Kemmerer was not hurt. It was not a situation.
Dylan, we've lost you. Did you hit your mute?
I just think Labriola made the walk to the mat and Kemmerer didn't. So why is he number 2?
Yeah, well,
because the Big Ten has it out for Nebraska.
Right.
Well, it's arguable, and Kemmerer is a returning All-American. They'll settle it because I think those two guys.
Labriola though, he's an All-American. I can also see it. Labriola got beat by Kemmerer last time they wrestled. It was only 3-2 though, and it was last year. And this is the seed for this year, I thought.
True.
So I don't know. I understand it, but I don't understand it at the same time. But either way, I mean, both guys get a bye, and it's splitting hairs, really, 1 and 2. Because looking at the rest of the bracket, I mean, you're basically trying to figure out if you want to take on Michigan's Logan Massa, who, you know, is a senior that took an Olympic red shirt last year. He's a stud. And Penn State's Carter Starocki, who is a freshman, who is beating top 5 guys left and right. So, like, it's not like you get a lot easier road as a 1 seed, as a 2 seed. So
that's very true.
We'll see what happens. But I like the way Labriola is wrestling. Like you said, he's so exciting to watch. He's kind of like Peyton Robb, but with more juice in him.
Yeah.
You know, he's always going forward, always after you, trying to throw guys, trying to take you down. It's nonstop, and that can wear a lot of guys out, especially during a tournament. So I look for him, honestly, making the finals and getting his shot at Kemmerer this year.
I agree. I think that those two guys will match up there. 184 is an interesting weight class with not a, you know, uncharacteristically, not a whole lot of Big Ten power. The number 1 ranked wrestler, Aaron Brooks from Penn State, obviously is from the Big Ten. But the rest of the rankings are relatively low in this weight class. And then that puts Taylor Venz in at the number 6. And Taylor Venz in February, March is not the same Taylor Venz that we saw at the beginning of the year. Thank goodness. He got off to a very slow start. It almost looked, in my opinion, that, you know, his head wasn't on right. And I'll just leave it that way. For whatever reason, he did not pick up where he left off last year. But, boy, he looked good the last time out. He's beaten some decent guys here down the stretch. You know, going into the season, Taylor Venz was ranked pretty high. He will do better than 6th place. He will wrestle, he'll wrestle better than that. And since he's in the bottom half of the bracket at the 6th seed, I expect to see Taylor Venz get to the finals. He'll knock off the number 4, then he'll knock off the number 2, and I would expect to see him in the finals.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, he's kind of like Chad Redd as far as tournament time, watch out. But I don't know. I just don't understand these guys, how their ebbs and flows are so drastic. You know, there for a while, I was preparing for Nathan Haas, true freshman, being the guy right here. And like, he looked pretty impressive when he was in there, but he wasn't, you know, a top 5 guy in the Big Ten, obviously.
Well, Nathan Haas knocked off the guy who'll be seated number 4. So
what's that?
Nathan Haas knocked off the guy that's going to be seated number 4, Owen Webster.
Right. In his first collegiate match. Yeah. 184 is crazy. Honestly, if you look at the 2 seed through 8 seed, I don't know how they seeded them, because this guy's got a win over this guy who has a win over that guy who has a win. There's no clear cut, even number 2 or 3 seed, really. It's just, Aaron Brooks and then 8 other guys that have an argument at it.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to watch. There'll be a lot of good matches.
197, Nebraska's Eric Schultz is the number 1 seed. Eric Schultz has wrestled well all year. He's undefeated. He's beaten the number 3 seed, and he's, you know, he hasn't been beaten by anybody. But the mystery at this class is going to be Miles Amin from Michigan. Everybody predicted that he was going to wrestle at 184 this year, and he's chosen to wrestle up at 197. I've heard some of the broadcasters say, well, he's going to, I can't remember the Olympic weights, but he's going to wrestle heavier than 184, you know, at the Olympics is his plan. And he's already qualified. I can't remember what nation.
Yeah, I can't remember either. It's
Sierra Leone, or that might.
No.
I
can't. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, he's already qualified for the Olympics.
Yeah. But I think here's what's
Dan Marino maybe or something like that.
Yeah, I could see. Well, first of all, Warner and Amin should wrestle in the semifinals. But if Miles Amin does beat Jacob Warner and gets to the finals and meets up with Eric Schultz, assuming he's there, that could be a little problematic for Schultz, because I think Amin is savvy enough and he understands, I'll just say he's really savvy. I could see him slowing Eric Schultz down a lot and, making it very difficult for him. But I like Eric Schultz. I think, he's earned a spot at number one, and I would hope that he'll bring back a gold medal to Lincoln.
Yeah, I think he's got the best shot at it. Obviously, as a number one seed, undefeated, he's got 3 wins over top 10 guys. But like you said, Miles Amin's sitting there, and he's only got a couple matches in, and you don't really know what he's about. I mean, but then he goes out and he pretty much destroyed Cam Caffey from Michigan State, and that's, he's a solid wrestler. I think Schultz only beat 6'4". So yeah, that's going to be a really tough matchup if that's the matchup in the finals, which I anticipate. But you never know. If Jacob Warner is tough to score on.
Yeah.
So it'll be tough. But I see Schultz. Schultz is going to have to hit with either Lucas Davison or Cam Caffey again. So those are both really tough guys. But yeah, Schultz. I talked to him at that press conference yesterday. And I asked him, I said, okay, so you're number one seed, do you ever need to, when you go in the wrestling room, does Jordan Burroughs ever humble you up or what? And he was just like, yep. He's like, as soon as I got ranked number one, I walked in the room and Jordan Burroughs said, you might be number one at 197 in the country, but you're number 2 in this room. So he said, yeah, he's like, yeah, he gives him a lot of crap about it, but I'm sure also, going against a guy like that in the room means Miles Amin ain't going to be nothing that he hasn't seen.
That's a good point. Because, Miles Amin he's going to be quicker than a lot of 197 pounders that, that Eric would have seen.
Right. And I know Jordan did a lot of work with Schultz in preparation when he was going to prepare for like Dan Taylor and stuff this last winter.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that takes us to the end up at 285. Gable Stevenson, other than Spencer Lee, is the surest bet, in my opinion, to win his weight class. And Mason Paris, in all likelihood, unless something unforeseen that I couldn't even predict, he's going to be in the finals. And then you got Tony Cassioppi from Iowa, who's going to be seated 3rd. And then you got our boy. You got good old Christian Lance is seated 5th, and he should, in his second match up against the guy from Illinois, Luke Luffman. And I'll tell you what, anybody that watched that match for heavyweights, holy smokes, those guys were flying around the mat in overtime like, 133 pounders. I couldn't believe what those guys laid out there at the end of that match. And Kristen Lance is going to qualify for the NCAA wrestling tournament. I don't believe he can break into the top 3, but I would expect that he could be 4th.
Yeah, I think he could be 4th. The big wild card though is that Penn State guy, Greg Kirkfleet. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, I did. You know what? I missed him. Is he in there? They're going to wrestling. Yeah.
He's seated 7th, and he's going to hit with Paris in the quarters.
Aha.
That's going to be a big one, and Kirkfleet could beat Paris.
Well,
it'd be tough.
Kirkfleet he's got quite a resume for.
Oh, and I've never really seen him wrestle until this last duel that they had. he does he's built like he's a 157 pounder that's just 6'4".
Yeah.
It's crazy. That guy looks so athletic.
We're at the beginning of a golden era of heavyweights.
Right. 100%.
Because you got that Schultz kid that's down there at Arizona State that's a freshman, Colton Schultz. He's a good one. You got Kirkvliet. Gable Stevenson, he's still a junior.
Right.
We are in a golden era of heavyweights.
100%. I feel sorry for some of these other heavyweights that aren't these guys.
Well, so that's kind of the weight by weight. It's gonna, the fur's gonna start flying on Saturday out at Penn State, and I always get excited for the Big Ten tournament. And I was telling someone today that a year, almost in 2 weeks, was when we were all getting fired up for the NCAA wrestling tournament, and it's hard to believe that it's been a whole year since then almost. And
yeah.
I'm excited for this wrestling tournament. Big Ten Network's going to have a lot of coverage. They're going to have wall-to-wall coverage of the wrestling tournament.
Yep, the whole time. That's the first time it's ever happened. So I'm excited about that. That'll be nice. I know what I'm doing Saturday all day and Sunday.
There you go.
So, but no, also I wanted to bring up, I talked to Manning and he was like, we need a champion. He's like, we need to blow the dust off that stat. We haven't had a champion, and they haven't had a champion since 2015, a conference title. And that one was Robert Kokesh, and he's a coach now for Nebraska. So that just shows you how long it's been. Nebraska has done really good as a team since then. They've finished fourth, fifth, and second at Big Tens since then without having a single champion. So, that just shows Nebraska usually has a really deep team, but they've kind of generally lacked that top shelf national championship contender. But I think that we have two this year in Schultz and Labriola.
You're predicting 2 champions?
No, 2 guys that I think could get there.
Could get there. You're not that bold?
I'll predict Schultz to win the title. How about that?
Todd?
I'm going to predict Schultz will win the title. I'm going to predict one hell of a match between Mikey Labriola and Michael Kemmerer.
Here, I'll do one, John. I think that Labriola and Kemmerer are going to hit at Big Ten final and the NCAA final, and I think they'll split, but I don't know which one will be who.
That's
this
a pretty
Kemmerer
bold.
guy's an Iowan?
Yeah.
Well, then we're not for him.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
No.
Right.
I don't know why, but when I watch wrestling, I like Mikey Labriola. There's just something about him. If I had to go with the whole wrestling team into a back alley, Labriola would be one guy that I'd say, yeah, he has to stay. Everybody else can go, and we'll take on the whole Iowa wrestling team. Me and him. I'll probably have a gun or machine gun or something. Anyway. But that guy, I like the way he acts. I like the way he,
Yeah.
Chad Redd's fun for me to watch. I think he's energetic. He's bouncy. I said he's bouncy, for God's sakes. As a guy that doesn't know much about wrestling and still shoots it or watches it and stuff. I like Chad Redd. He's kind of, I don't know. His personality is neat.
He's pretty bouncy.
You got to keep in mind that sometimes I'm looking at these guys from a different perspective. I have a big ass lens on my camera and I see their whole face, and their eyeballs when they're doing some of these events. And you can realize, the eyes are the gateway to the soul, gentlemen. And Mikey Labriola has the eyes of a killer.
Mikey Labriola wrestles with passion. And,
he does.
And he's tough. And
and guess what? Nebraska's going to have him for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I didn't know
he's still only a junior. All these are Nebraska's really senior heavy team with a lot of senior talent, I think 5 of our starters are seniors. But yeah, Labriola is the only junior. But yeah, he might be the best guy on the team.
Yeah.
Chad Red has the eyes of a killer too, but he's a really nice killer. He's like a charming killer, like Ted Bundy. If you ever hear, I wonder if these guys ever listen to this. You called me Ted Bundy? Well, yes, in a good way.
Yeah, he's probably the biggest 174 pounder you'll see too.
Yeah.
I don't know how that guy makes that weight. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up moving up when Benz is gone, man.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Is there anything else about wrestling?
No.
Okay, here's what I want you both to do for the next time we do wrestling stuff.
Okay.
I want you to think about name, image, and likeness. And I want you to come up with very imaginative ways that the wrestling guys could sell themselves as a brand. And we'll save that for later. We'll do that as a segment.
Homework, John?
Yeah, this is like homework.
Marketing homework. Okay.
And it can't be a beer because the NCAA, everybody would go, oh, college players, they can't do alcohol or drugs or thing. You know what I mean? It has to be like, I don't know. It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
But we'll do that in the not too distant future.
We'll do it between the Big Tens and NCAA.
Okay. All right. So Todd, what else do we have since you're taking over?
Oh, since I'm taking over?
Yeah, since you're taking over.
Well, there are a few things, John, you and I are big baseball fans. We got a little bit of bad news. As exciting as it is that the season's going to open up this weekend down in Texas, the baseball team lost its closer. Colby Gomez is going to be out for the season, the kid from Millard. I think that's a setback. It's unfortunate, and hopefully they can find somebody else in the bullpen that's going to fill that role.
Baseball starts this weekend in Round Rock, Texas against Purdue. Yeah. We'll pray for them that they don't catch no coronavirus. Of course they can't because it don't exist.
It doesn't exist in Texas. It's over.
Doesn't exist in Texas. I hope they don't catch any viruses of any kind.
John,
there's also something interesting in Texas. Electricity.
So, John, you've paid pretty close attention the last few years to the basketball program, and I'm not much of a basketball fan, but I have followed enough to know some of the names and some of the stories. Nebraska had maybe its most convincing and most enjoyable victory earlier this week against Rutgers. And that was on the same day when the prolific scorer, Teddy Allen, announced that he was going to step away from the team. I know that on social media, there have been some people that have been highly critical of that. There have been some unflattering comments made about Teddy Allen. That's not what came from official statements from Coach Hoiberg and other people associated with the basketball team. But talk to us about Teddy Allen and how, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, he remains kind of an enigma. I mean, Nebraska goes and he scores 41 points in a game. And if you watch that game, Teddy Allen in that game made some unbelievable, amazing plays to score some of his 41 points. But, it was a losing effort. They lost to Penn State 86-83. It was just, the loss was disappointing because, well, they played pretty well. They just didn't pull it out at the end. But, Teddy Allen, he started at West Virginia. He transferred to Wichita State. He sat out a year. He never played for them because he got arrested after something happened with his girlfriend. He went to Western Nebraska Community College where he was the JUCO leading scorer of the year. And then he came to Nebraska. So, and now he's gone for Nebraska early. You had 4 games left when he left the team. and apparently it's left the team, not dismissed from the team. But he had, Fred Hoiberg had mentioned that he had a wrist injury and that it hurt. That's why he was a little bit up and down in his scoring. Like he scored 41 and then he really didn't play against Minnesota very much, as Nebraska knocked off Minnesota for a win. So they have 2 wins in a row. It's a winning streak, something we haven't seen in Nebraska basketball for a long time. I mean, in conference, maybe we beat up some non-conference crud schools. But the game against Rutgers was, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal because the offense, it looked like an unstoppable offense. And I imagine there's somebody, if they hear this, will go, "Whoa, that's Rutgers." Rutgers is a good basketball team. It's not their football program. They're they have a winning record, and we beat the shit out of them. That was the thing, is they never were in the game at ever. And if you want to experience joy as a Nebraska fan, one of the things you can do is when our Nebraska basketball team beats opponents, and they will in the future much more than they do now, go to the opposing SB Nation site and look at their game thread. Because if you went through that Rutgers game thread, you would find horror. Well, not for me. I enjoyed the shit out of it, but they were horrified that they were losing to our crap basketball team, which honestly, if you're paying attention, what you saw against Rutgers was them running an offense, and them running an offense that was full of cutting and passing and moving the ball. And if that's the offense that they can run with the players they have, they're going to win a lot of games in the future. It's like they're finally pulling it together. And unfortunately, Teddy Allen doesn't get to be part of that.
Well, let me ask you this, John, and I'm not trying to stir up trouble here, but could the Nebraska team, were they able to run that same kind of offense and play that same style of game with Teddy Allen on the floor? Or
there were times, I think that the thing, you and I have talked about baseball and how every baseball team out there needs a guy that's gritty, tough, and just kind of a son of a bitch. Because when the team gets down, that's the guy that has to pull everybody out of the ground and say, we're going to get our asses in gear and get out of slumps and win games. And I think Teddy Allen was kind of an enigma in that way too, where Nebraska would go on these long scoring droughts, and they needed a guy like Teddy Allen who was going to, he did hero ball sometimes, where he hogged the ball and he took the shots, and sometimes he took shitty shots. That's kind of everybody on the Nebraska basketball team a lot. I mean, you've seen an offense that's been fairly good at times, again, exemplary against Rutgers, but they make some really terrible offensive decisions sometimes. And, I think sometimes that's just basketball, but Teddy Allen was this guy. Sometimes he hogged the ball way too much. When he started assisting with the ball, he was phenomenal. All right. So what you try to do with a guy is get him to the point that he's recognizes when do you assist and when do you not assist. I mean, you look at Shamil Stevenson, he has this tendency to take the ball, he's a big guy, and just fullback his way into the lane and plow guys over. And he always gets carded for charging. If he can learn to not just lower his shoulder and mash into a guy or pass the ball off, he's going to be phenomenal. And he's played well at times, that every once in a while you just go, well, there's Shamil. I mean, shit, if you're going to hit Marcus Carr from Minnesota in the lane, hit him so he doesn't come back.
John,
I know that's not basketball, but come on.
It is.
Kitten in there.
You guys had to have seen the viral tweet out there of this game in Russia they're playing now, where they're two teams on the basketball floor. It looks like about 10 guys per team wearing wrestling singlets with a basketball. There's no dribbling. It's the same type of goal. You put the ball through the basket, but you don't dribble it down the floor. And I mean, there are these guys throwing each other, away from the ball. And once the guy starts going into the lane, it's just like this mass wrestling match right there in the middle of the floor. I don't even know what they call it. But it fits into that Russian persona, of the tough guy Russian. I'm going to throw you out on the ground, and it was the craziest looking thing I think I've ever seen. And it's legit. It's not just 20 guys that they slap singlets on and say, go wrestle on the basketball court.
Todd, I believe we used to call that kill the man with the ball.
Okay.
We called it something different that we don't say anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't a basketball. We played something we called Red Dog. In my high school, that's what it called. When we had our break for lunch break, we called Red Dog basketball. And it was, there was downfield blocking, and it was, there was usually 10 guys on a team in the whole basketball court full of people. And we just beat the shit out of each other. And the teachers didn't say anything. And, it's Red Dog basketball. And that's what we did. It's just a beating. And I could stand that kind of basketball because I can't play basketball.
Otherwise,
actually.
you were on the bench because you fouled out. And yeah. Well, hey, there's one other thing I'd like to bring up. And, I guess, Dylan, are you a native Nebraskan? Did you grow up in Nebraska, Dylan?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think you guys, Nebraska fans and Nebraskans, I think all took a step back this week with the unfortunate news of the passing of Andy Hoffman. Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say in probably 46, 47 other states in our country, a man of Andy Hoffman's stature, his death probably would go by without a whole lot of people noticing. I read a headline someplace and it said Andy Hoffman was an ordinary guy doing extraordinary things. And I think that really epitomizes why Nebraskans rallied around his son Jack and rallied around that family. And I just a couple of things. Life is this delicate dance sometimes, and the tragedy that the family went through with young Jack and him having cancer at a very young age, the Nebraska athletic program kind of taking him under its wing, the football program. Most Nebraskans will always remark that one of the greatest things they ever saw on the field at Memorial Stadium was Jack Hoffman in the spring game with Taylor Martinez, being his lead blocker down the field. A very fond memory. And, it sounds like Jack is in remission. And I think if I'm not correct, or if I'm not, I think he played football this year at his high school. And then lo and behold, 7 months ago, the state of Nebraska found out that his dad, Andy Hoffman, had brain cancer in essence, and fought a valiant fight and then just passed. And I think the one thing that I want to say, and then you guys grew up in the state and I'm just an interloper. But I think what's really unique and interesting about this is how the state of Nebraska identifies with an ordinary guy whose son happened to love the football team. And, it's an extension of that Nebraska nice. And I know people hate hearing that, but it's an extension of the character of the state of Nebraska and the character of Nebraskans, that they all surrounded that family with love and support. So rest in peace, Andy Hoffman, and a lot of people are going to have some very fond memories about that family. But John, Dylan, you guys you grew up in the state.
Yeah, I'll say, like you said, a lot of states this wouldn't happen. I think, and this isn't just exclusive to Nebraskans, obviously, but a lot of people have been touched by cancer, have either had it or known somebody that has it or lost somebody to it. And it's tough. And I remember actually back when that spring game happened with Jack Hoffman, I was here at Columbus Telegram, and I wrote a column about that. I thought that was the greatest moment in the history of Husker football. And I really did, because, you know, the way that team took that kid under their wing, and I mean, honestly, they possibly saved that kid's life. Just make, you know, I mean, the positivity you get from being able to go in and, you know, Rex Burkhead's friendship with him. His dad, Andy, was just an amazing man. Every interview I ever saw with him, he was always positive. I mean, I have a 5-year-old, and I couldn't imagine getting that kind of news about, you know, brain cancer. So I commend that whole family for everything all the fight that they've put out. And, you know, obviously it's not done yet, but yeah, it's a sad day losing him. So yeah, rest in peace, Andy. And yeah, it's sad. I'll give it to you, John.
That Jack Hoffman run was it showed that Bo Pelini actually had a really unbelievably beautiful side to him that unfortunately didn't come out a whole lot. But, you know, probably the dichotomy of a person as passionate and as strong a personality as Bo Pelini have both the explosive side and the Hoffman side. But I guess the only thing I'd say about the Hoffmans is, boy, 2 people in your family with brain cancer, that is really, life shows how cruel life can be. And 42 is way too young to go. And I think that's about it. I guess you kind of get dragged down by some of the cynicism and the losing, you know, and how people can get so angry about surrounding Nebraska football. But, you know, doing that stuff with his life, it's inspiring. And I guess it shows the good side of what we can do together when we want to be good together. So rest in peace, Andy Hoffman, and Godspeed. And you can wrap it up, Todd. You're in charge.
Well, I tell you what, I was just going to say, John, let's wrap it up. And
I have your permission. All right.
Seeing as how liberals are running the country now, yes, I'll go ahead and give that to you.
Thank you, our new overlord, Todd.
Yeah, you're outnumbered here, John.
Oh my God. Great. The commies are taking over. This is John Johnston, kind of pretending to be in charge of the 5 Heart podcast. That's our show for this week. And remember, 5 hearts is the only hearts you need. Todd?
Thank you very much, John. Go Big Red.
You want to add anything, Dylan? A call sign?
Thanks, guys. The dude abides.
There you go.
The dude abides, man.